Good morning, afternoon, evening, midnight, whatever. I can't tell the time. That's why I put, I think, late at night. So I apologize. Eventually, I will be able to tell the little hand from the big hand, but so far I can't. So I apologize. Good morning to everybody. I'm glad everybody's here. Hope everybody's well. Not legal advice. Like, subscribe, share, comment, spit, whatever you want to do. I'm going to talk about a little bit about. I saw a tweet by John Forster, and then I had some other things I was going to talk about anyway. They kind of all related, so I might as well do it in one thing here. So I will do that. Before I get to that point, just wanted to briefly address a couple of other things. By the way, this is all opinion, thought, my best estimate, speculation. Usually, whenever I state something, unless I state it's absolutely wild speculation, that means there is something. It's not like I'm just making it up. I may be wrong. It may not happen, but it's not like it's just kind of thrown out there. Or at least most of it's not thrown out there. It may not be accurate, may not be correct. So keep that in mind, of course. So I decided and I said this prior live stream, I'm going to break up the jokes a little bit. So I'm going to do just to keep you hostage, if you so choose, I'm going to do 6 jokes per live stream. I'll do 4 at the start and 2 at the end. So we'll see how that kind of format goes and see if I can keep you hostage. It requires that the later jokes be really good, and that's a tough call. So, but we shall see. Anyone know what obtaining information through deception is? Asking for a friend. That was a joke, by the way. I just got fired from my job at Google Maps. I was terrible at drawing lines between countries. They said I was borderline incompetent. Most people are shocked at how bad an electrician I am. And last but not least, on this side, my garden is my gardener is completely incompetent. He keeps on soiling himself. All right. So now to some more serious topics, and we will address the last 2 at the end of the live stream. So if you want to hang out for the ending jokes, which may be good or may be bad, you never know. We'll see then. But what I wanted to address was, I think John Forster put out a tweet last night, basically with I don't remember what it was, but it was basically time is running out. That was the message. And I wanted to address that. And then I wanted to address the receiver, his remuneration, and the audit. So I'm going to take that in that order. So first thing I'm going to talk about is John Forster's tweet. And obviously I have communications with Mr. Forster. We are on very good terms. I think he would say that also. And I saw that he put out a tweet, and it appeared like it was time is running out. And based upon that, and based upon other things that I have heard, and based upon putting that all together, I think that Forster is becoming super impatient with the speed of the deal, or the lack thereof. And I know he has counsel. I've never spoken to his counsel, but I know he has really competent counsel. And my kind of read from the counsel is that they're surprised also at the speed at which the receiver, the receiver's counsel, whoever that is, and that might be different counsel than I've mentioned before, but how they're pursuing the transaction. And I think it's extremely frustrating for Mr. Forster. I know he has other people that he has to account to, I guess other partners, shareholders, or whatever. And it puts a lot of pressure on him. And there's really as far as I know, there's no explanation for the ridiculously slow pace. That's my opinion, by the way. the ridiculously slow pace, and part of that is a lack of, in my opinion, this is all opinion. So part of this is the lack of disclosure. So if you aren't told something, and then a bunch of time passes, then your mind goes all kinds of different directions. So I think in large part, all the issues that have arose out of this receivership fall on the receiver and his counsel for not being transparent. I've said that 50 times, and we get new examples each time. And my intention, obviously, is not to berate or critique the receiver. My goal, and my singular goal here, is to make sure, and whether this happens or not, I ultimately don't have control, but my goal is, and it's been clear from throughout, get a deal done so this stupid thing can trade again, so that all the shareholders who are trapped in this nonsense can get out. That's the goal. So I don't give a whatever what the receiver does or what his counsel does in terms of their daily tasks or what they're doing for GTII if there's no deal and it doesn't trade again. I don't give a C about that. So when they report about what they're doing in those 4 lengthy reports that we probably paid an excessive amount of money for, or at least we paid a lot of money for, because I don't know the amount, that's kind of irrelevant. Because if there's no deal done and this thing doesn't trade, then I think, in my mind, then the receivership has been a failure. And the only ones who would benefit, of course, would be to the extent the receiver gets paid and to the extent the receiver's counsel get paid. They would be the winners. So to me, I don't give a crap about that stuff, because what they do on a daily basis is completely irrelevant, or in large part, in my mind, irrelevant to what we want to see. And we want to see everything done, it trade, it being back on the market, and we can go from there. So Forrester expressed in his tweet, and I'm interpreting that he's running out of time, and he's pissed. And I've had communications with him. That doesn't sound out of line with my communications with him. And my feeling, and I've had the same feeling, is I just don't understand the pace and the lack of energy and enthusiasm and interest in getting this deal done. And maybe there's reasons, just haven't been disclosed. But we're talking about a company where the receiver in his various reports claims that the prior management had a bunch of deals that he didn't close. And now we're involved in the company and a deal with somebody. Obviously, AI-versity wants to do this deal, not in doubt. And here, again, without explanation, maybe there are explanations, but without explanation to this point in time, kind of like just moving around lackadaisically, and without clarity, and with inconsistencies also. And we'll get to that in a second. So I understand Forrester's tweet. And again, based upon Forrester's tweet and based upon what I know, if this deal doesn't close, it's not going to be because of Forrester or AI-versity. It's going to be because of the way, in my opinion, and again, I don't know all the facts. I wasn't involved in negotiations, whatever. I just hear it from an outsider, and I'm perceiving it as an outsider. But in my mind, if this deal doesn't go, it's because the receiver and whoever was helping him just mismanaged the transaction, because this is a deal that should close, and maybe it will, and I'm still hopeful it will. But as of now, I wonder the intentions. I wonder if the receiver and the receiver's counsel really intend for the transaction to close. I wonder. I don't know. I really don't know. For the receiver's counsel, you have to remember, and this is all receiverships, or generally most receiverships, and I've been in receiverships. It's not like something I haven't been in. Not in this context, but I've been in receiverships. Receiverships counsel usually makes a ton of money, and the receiver is usually an attorney who usually is from the receivership's counsel. And so the receiver usually drives the case because he's an attorney from the firm that's representing him. In this case, as far as I know, the receiver is not connected to his counsel. And unfortunately, it appears that he doesn't have any control or doesn't influence or doesn't direct or cedes to or whatever. It seems like the receiver's counsel has a lot of authority over the receiver. That's kind of the way it appears to me. And the receiver's counsel, I don't think, has the same interests as we do. So that makes me concerned. And so, if again, my view would be, if this deal doesn't go forward, it's not because of AI-versity or Forrester. It's going to be because of the way it's been handled, and we would have to review that when the time comes. So I'm hoping we don't have to get into that. I'm hoping that the deal goes forward, it's successful, everything moves forward, and there's not a bunch of litigation afterwards. But to say that that's not being considered based upon the handling would not be a fair statement. Of course, I've thought about it, and I'm probably not the only one who's thought about it, just the way this thing's handling. You know, people spend money and time, and you can't dick around with people and expect that they won't seek remedies. So, and I don't know, by the way, maybe the receiver's doing a fantastic job. Maybe his counsel's got many reasons for moving at this pace. It's all possible. We just don't know based upon the disclosures that have been made to date. So, we're left with trying to figure that out. Okay, so that's Forrester, and I'm really concerned about that. And again, I think it's on the receiver and his counsel to get the deal done. And if you believe that too, then reach out to the receiver and the receiver's counsel. I think I saw somebody, what can we do? That's what you can do. Reach out to the receiver and the receiver's counsel. Tell them that you're in favor of the AI. If you are, if you're not, then don't. Okay. Don't do anything that I say just because I say it. If you disagree, if you agree, then if you disagree, then maybe you say the opposite. If you agree, though, then reach out to in a nice, friendly way, but articulately and concisely. Reach out to the receiver's counsel, and say, we're concerned that this deal's slogging along, or words that you think are appropriate, and get it done, or words that you think are appropriate. Let them know you're watching them, and let them know you're concerned about the way they're handling them. That's what we can do. But you got to stay on top of them, and you got to do it in a civil manner. It's really important. You can't yell at them. You can't cuss at people or whatever. Got to do it in a civil manner, but be persistent and be concise and to the point. Unless you don't want to do it, then don't do it. And obviously, by doing this, that's exactly what I'm doing. I am communicating because I know that the receiver's counsel sees all this stuff. And I don't know about the receiver. Hopefully, he has better things to do. Hopefully, he's working on this stuff as opposed to watching my videos. I hope the receivership's counsel doesn't charge for watching these videos. Don't know. Remember, I've asked for invoices from the receiver who has not returned them as of yet. And I've asked for insurance policies. And as to the invoices, I was more interested in what we're being charged for as to the reports. And obviously you can, and I'm making this offer out here publicly, you don't have to give me all the billings. I don't need the billings, and you could retract all the entries. All I need is all the time entries reflecting the billings for all the reports that were done and charged by counsel. You don't have to disclose any attorney-client information, nothing, just time and the amounts. And we're entitled to that. So that's the demand I'm making, and I'll put it in writing later on today. So we need to know what we're paying for and how it was distributed. And also, there's no excuse for not having turned over the declaration pages for the insurance that I've asked for on multiple occasions. Just be honest, the receiver doesn't really respond. I've asked a lot of stuff. The receiver doesn't respond. I try to do it in a civil way. I hope I do, but he doesn't respond generally. I think they're concerned about, and that's the issue. They've used this blanket exception. It's non-public information, so we can't tell you. My response is, if it's material non-public information, and make it public, and then we have no issue, or give it to me and I'll make it public and there's no issue. I really don't understand that, but that's the defense they offer every time they're asked and they refuse to provide information. It's material non-public information, can't disclose it, yada, yada, yada. It's basically the argument that they've made. I think that's overused, and it's probably excessive, and it probably doesn't apply, and there's ways to work around it. Which leads me to my next point, an attack on shareholder. So, I've told you that, shareholders interact with me and they kind of usually report on their interactions with the receiver's counsel. So I had one in particular who told me, and I have not seen all the questions he sent to the receiver. In fact, I've seen very few of I've seen very few of the questions sent to the receiver. But recently, earlier, within the past 2 weeks, I'd say, maybe the past week or so, I got an email from him, and it was regarding to his interaction with the receiver. And when I saw it, I was appalled by the receiver's response. Now, again, I have not seen all the questions, so maybe it's deserved. I don't know. But from what I saw, I thought it was, wow, this was really over the top, and suggested to me that, who's your allegiance to here, sir? Is it to your own pocketbook and the council's pocketbook, or is it to the shareholders and company? Really? I mean, that's what I've had that question throughout. Just be honest. I wonder, who's the allegiance that the receiver and receivers counsel have? Is it to their own betterment, or is it to the company and the shareholders? And you could draw your own conclusions. I have drawn my own conclusions. That's why we discuss these things. So apparently, the shareholder asked the receiver a question, and I don't see the question, the entirety of the question, but the way he frames it to me, he's asking, what's going on? Give me a status update. That the question is. The response is, and I won't give the person's name, but the response is, I will remind you, this is apparently from the receiver. Now it says from the receiver, but it copies a bunch of attorneys. So is it possible it was drafted by the attorneys? That's possible. But as it's reflected here, it comes from the receiver. So I'm going to assume it does come from the receiver. It says, Mr. Blank, I will remind you that you're not even a party to this case. I have indulged you with my time despite your constant request for material, non-public information from me. And this is the part that got me. I just thought this was completely and entirely inappropriate. And perhaps if the receiver was charging for every answer he had to provide, then perhaps he wouldn't be getting these inquiries, or to the extent, or maybe he would respond the same way. So after he talks about the material non-public information, the next line says, should you persist in your inquiries, I will need to notify the SEC of your conduct. And when I saw that, I said, who are you? I mean, that to me suggested that somebody's interests may not be aligned with shareholders, and that somebody has to be watched very carefully. When I saw that line, you mean you're threatening a shareholder that you're going to take him to the SEC because he's a pain in the ass to you? Is that that's what you're saying? I really thought that was really inappropriate. Really, entirely inappropriate. The next line says, you're certainly free to contact the court. Please also preserve all your records. That's a litigation threat. The way I read it, that's a threat, basically, that you give in litigation sometimes when you want to threaten somebody, basically saying is, we're going to sue you, so make sure you keep all the information you have. Don't destroy any evidence. And then it's thank you. That was the response. That's within a week, by the way. I thought that was completely and entirely inappropriate. Again, maybe the questions were so out of line that it was deemed an appropriate response. I don't know what the actual questions were, but even if they were, even if it was, tell me when you're going to sell your stock. I don't understand, if there were questions like that, would that be like, I mean, I don't know. Is that like a securities violation? Why would that be a securities violation? The receiver would just say, no, I can't say it. So I don't understand if somebody asks in a question that the receiver can't answer, why does that justify going or threatening to go to the SEC and threatening, in the way I read this little short email, of filing an action? I really didn't understand it. I really was bothered by it, honestly. And again, it makes me, because it's just, you have to consider this with everything else. It makes me wonder the allegiance of the receiver. It does. And I don't know how you could read that and think otherwise, especially with, I just told you about Forster getting pissed and he apparently is running out of time. I've done a bunch of statements where I kind of look at documents and kind of just read them, as I'm going to do in a second, and kind of say, how do you explain this stuff? Anyway, but I saw that and it really pissed me off. It did. And again, I don't know what the questions were, and perhaps they were completely inappropriate, and some kind of reply and putting the person in the spot is appropriate. But saying that you're going to take them to the SEC and kind of implicitly suggesting that you're going to sue them, I don't know. I mean, that to me seemed like it was way over the top and inappropriate to me. But, everybody could have a different feel about it. That was my conclusion. It bothered me, though. It really did bother me. Again, sounded like something that could have been handled in a much more nuanced fashion. Not like that. So I'm gonna leave that topic. Second topic I want to talk about was the receiver's remuneration. And I wanted to, again, I talked about it a little bit, but I've asked for invoices. I just need the time and entries and dollar amounts for the reports at this point in time. That's all I'm asking about. So you've received a bunch of invoices and a bunch of money's been paid to the attorneys, and I'd like to see how much has been spent on the reports. And the reason why I'm asking you that, Mr. Receiver, because that's one of your responsibilities, to prepare and keep shareholders aware of what's going on. So if you are, instead of doing that, you're having your attorneys do everything and paying them for that, then I don't know what you're getting paid for. I really don't. I don't know to this point in time. I really don't. I mean this true and accurate. I do not know what you are doing. I know in a large part what your counsel is doing, but I do not know what you're doing. And based on that, I do not know what justification there is for paying you anything, to be honest, at this point in time. And I don't know if your compensation scheme, which was created without any input from shareholders, obviously, I don't know if that's an appropriate compensation scheme. And obviously, you cannot receive excessive remuneration. And the point of all this, and I mentioned this before, is not for the receiver and the receiver's counsel to make out. It's for the company to stay in business or improve itself, and for the shareholders. That's the whole purpose of this action, as you should have known from the start. The purpose is to get this traded again, get an audit completed, get a transaction done, and go to town. That's the purpose. So that's why I have concerns about remuneration. And I don't want, like, somebody, and I don't know, because I haven't seen the invoices despite me asking multiple times. So I don't know if there's been, true value received by shareholders. I don't know if there's been double charges, because I haven't seen the invoices. I don't know what they've charged for. And again, if you want to protect attorney-client information, I don't need all the entries. I just need the time and amounts that were paid for receiver reports to date. Probably would help, some kind of accounting is, separate and apart from that. And I'm not seeking that, but it probably would help, separate and apart from that, to break down what the legal fees have been spent on. And of course, there needs to be some explanation, and it'll become clear in a second, about what kind of money has been spent on accounting and why we don't have an audit as of today. Now, maybe this afternoon we'll have a complete audit. And I would be so happy and pleasantly surprised, but as of today, we don't. And that's my third issue that I wanted to address here. So we talked about Forster and time running out, him being pissed, everybody being pissed. We talked about the attack on the shareholder. We talked about allegiance and questions about compensation and, wanting to see billings and who's doing the reporting and what is the receiver doing and what are they getting paid for, et cetera. And now we're on the audit part. And we, as far as I know, we really don't know as of today what's going on. I hope that this week we'll be pleasantly surprised and the audit will be done. And that will be the first step towards getting it to be traded. But I don't know as of today because they won't tell us about the audit. And apparently they won't even ask about the status of the audit. Now, I kind of thought, since they won't do that, they won't do it that way, and they won't be, transparent about it. And perhaps they think, again, that's material non-public information. Why they don't make it public, I don't know. But, but whatever, because I can't trade it. I don't know who can trade it. Maybe there's some small amount of trading going on. It certainly ain't I. I don't know anybody who is. I don't work with anybody or tell anybody. In fact, I would say the opposite. This is certainly not, and I've said it before, this is not financial trading advice. Whatever I say here is related to the receivership and to what's going on about the company. It's not related to whatever that nonsensical trading that's going on of minimal shares. I stay away from that, not involved, make no recommendations or anything like that. So the audit, what's going on? What is going on? We know that it's moving forward, but I kind of had to go through and I thought about it. So, I remembered in the receivers reports that the audit's been discussed and it's been discussed a long time. And, what's taken so long? I've been thinking. So I kind of decided, am I incorrect? Or did the audit report kind of did the receivers report suggest a different course of events as to the audit? And where's the money that was spent on the audit? How much has been spent on the audit? Why haven't people completed their jobs? And if people were negligent in the completion of their jobs, why haven't they gone after them? For example, if you recall, there was a prior auditor that was involved. This is after Borgers got canned by the SEC. There was a new auditor bought in by old management. Then the receiver came on board. He started to work with that old firm. He indicated that they basically, this is the legal term, dicked around with him and wouldn't cooperate, breached their duties, etc. But there was no lawsuit that was filed against them. There was no attempt to kind of press them to provide information that was necessary. Nothing. And they have insurance. CPA firm will have insurance. So I don't understand why they didn't pursue that accounting firm that they said dropped the ball and breached their duties, etc. Made no sense to me. They didn't pursue them, although it was in California, and it might be a contingency matter. And I don't know if their current counsel would refuse to do it on a contingency and instead would not want to give it to another law firm because they would be concerned about losing control over the matter. So I don't know if it wasn't done because of that reason, but they did go after Astra. And I think that's an hourly as far as I know, although I haven't seen a retainer agreement on that either. But it didn't make sense to me that they complain about the prior auditor basically jacking around with us. And they did nothing to pursue a relief as far as I know. Haven't seen a reference to it. Completely gone. They basically said that at one point in time that they stopped the efforts. But let me read from the report. So let's go through there's 4 interim reports. Let's kind of go date by date, see where they take us and see where we are now. And we can see by their own words, because I like to, most of these live streams, almost entirely, when I'm talking about what has gone on, I'm referring to the receiver's reports. So it's basically what the receiver has told us. And the receiver filed those with the court. I presume they're filed and they're meant to be truthful and accurate. And I approach them as such. But they're held to that standard also. They can't just file a pile of crap and then disavow it later on. It's not really appropriate. So let's look at let's just go through the 4, and then we'll be done after we go through the 4. And you could draw your own conclusions other than the fact, again, if you think you need to put pressure on the receiver and the receiver's counsel to get the AIversity deal done or any deal done or get them moving, let them know in a nice, cordial way. No cussing, concise, to the point, but persistent. Let them know. Let them know you want this deal done, or if you don't want it done, let them know that too. Or don't, whatever you say. So first report, October 7th, 2024. Receiver's first interim report. I'm just going to the relevant parts talking about the auditor, because I'm not going to read all the reports because some of them are like 50 pages long. Drafted apparently by counsel, not by the receiver. To date, my accountant and I have been in communication with the company's auditor. The auditor has been attempting to complete the audits for the periods 2022 and 2023, plus subsequent periods of 2024. The auditor has provided us with a complete cloud drive with all support documents that they have received from the company thus far. However, the auditor has reported to me that many items remained outstanding. Examples of outstanding items include support documents for the following: $23,000 for travel expenses, $2,400 for travel expenses. I'm reading, by the way. I'm kind of shortening it a little bit. $500,000 in expenses, $50,000 in meeting expenses, $10,000 in insurance expenses, and $60,000 in auto expenses. In order to expedite the completion of the company's audit, I've taken the following action. Again, this is October of 2024. Richard Hawkins, not Richard Hoffman, Richard Hawkins, my accountant, is working with the auditor in completing the financial audit of the company for the following periods, 2022, 2023, and the subsequent periods of 2024. The combined work must assure no material misstatements are included in the financial statements. Currently, this work is expected, so listen to this. This is where we start. This work is expected to be completed on or before November 1st, 2024, unless former officers and directors fail to cooperate as required by the receivership order. So our first indication from the receiver in October is that by November 1 of 2024, we will be going to town and all the necessary information will have been obtained. I don't know where they got that information. Was it from the auditors? Was it from Richard Hawkins? Was it from the receiver? Was it from prior management? Because it doesn't mention, but it sounds like November 1, 2024, we're going to town. So that's off to a good start. So if you had read that first interim report, which I did, of course, and I probably did a live stream on it, I would have said, if I would have addressed that, I would say, wow, it's going to be fast. November 1, sounds like we're moving. Because we knew, and it's still the case today, that we need an audit to be completed before we could have any transaction complete. So without the audit, you can't do anything. Without that, there's no hope of a uplist of a transaction or anything. So when we see from the first report, November 1, yay! Then the second report comes. Now, if you recall, that first report said we should have everything by November 1. So this report is dated November 12th of 2024. And I'm just going to, it's 53 pages long. Probably my speculation here is this is also drafted by the receiver's counsel, not the receiver. And we were probably charged for this, but I don't know because I haven't seen the invoice. But because I was told by the receiver's counsel they prepared another report, that's why I conclude they probably prepared this report. So this one, when they're talking about audit matters, I'm talking at page 2 of it, it says, the receiver continues to work on the audit. The current status is that the auditor is reviewing audit open item support documents delivered to the auditor on November 8th, 2024. The receiver awaiting certain accounting treatment comments back from the auditor. He anticipates completion of the audit. Now, again, so think about this. We heard November 1, then November 14th of 2024. This is what the receiver is telling us. He anticipates completion of the audit by the end of November, taking into consideration holiday scheduling. Now, I guess you could argue that it could have been like November of 2025, but obviously it's suggesting November of 2024. So we got our first report says November 1, 2024. Then we have a specific November 12th of 2024 telling us by the end of November, taking into account holiday scheduling, the audit should be done. Now, as far as I know, by the end of November of 2024, the audit was not done. So I go to the next report. Next report is dated January 14th of 2025. As far as I know, because I haven't seen it, and I don't think anyone else has seen it because it wasn't done, as far as I know, we get the receiver's third interim report. Now, this may have, I don't know who prepared this, although my assumption again is that it's prepared by the receiver's counsel. And here, again, when we're talking about the audit, so now this is January. So we got a first interim report referred to November 1. A November 14th second interim report said by the end of November, the audit would be done. Now we're already in January of 2024. Just reading from it, so this is their words, not mine. The receiver is determined, and the topic is audit matters, just to be as clear. The receiver has determined that GTII's current auditor is unable to complete the audit within their budgetary guideline and is seeking $46,000 in additional fees for work conducted during a period of time when no additional fees have been delivered to the auditor. So I'm going to stop there. Did they complete the audit and you refused to pay it? Or was this for work that was done unrelated to the completion of the audit? Really unclear. I don't know why it took you guys 4 months to determine that. I don't know why you guys accepted the auditor chosen by prior management from the get-go and wasted 3 or 4 months and whatever amount of money. I don't know. Again, doesn't make sense to me. Kind of suggests a complete lack of understanding of the accounting issues and of dealings with accounting. And you didn't realize also that they had used Borgers who got completely shut down by the SEC, and that anybody they might choose might be infected? Okay. The auditor is not willing to provide a reasonable estimate of audit completion. So you remember before that we had dates. Now they don't. Now, what is a reasonable estimate? Is that they won't do it, or that the time frame is too far out? And if the receiver thought the time frame was too far out, what was that time frame? Had we passed that by now? Perhaps these guys said we're not going to be done till July, and the receiver said I can't wait till July, and now we're in September and we still don't have an audit completed. So I would like to know what that estimate was, if there was an estimate. The auditor has taken and this is the part where I mentioned before, why, and if this is true, why, as opposed to going after little entities like Astra and not pursuing Justine, why did they not go after the auditor if they say in this January 13th, 2024 report, the auditor has taken an adversary posture toward receiver's accountant and is unwilling to share specific information critical to our understanding of how the audit can successfully be completed, or even provide us with ongoing communication and updates of their work. The auditor has also asked us to diverge from generally accepted accounting principles and conduct our own audit confirmation process with individuals and entities without disclosing to us the various parties that have already completed the confirmation process in defiance of PCAOB guidelines. We deem the behavior acceptable, inappropriate, and highly unprofessional. Now, again, like I said, is why even have engaged these guys if they were chosen by prior management? Because you knew that. Why waste months and probably money and time dicking around with these guys when you should have gone to somebody professional in the first place? Obviously, their conclusion was that these guys weren't professional, but they had to go through the process of wasting time and money to get there. I don't know how much legal fees was spent. I don't know how much was paid to these guys that wasn't recovered. I believe some of the fees were recovered. I don't know the amount, but I'm sure legal fees were spent. They didn't have to be spent if an appropriate choice was made by the receiver as to the accountant from the one. And this is not like it wasn't suspect, because it was suspect because it was chosen by prior management. So why not choose a different accountant from the start? Continuing on, and this is the last paragraph of this, the relevant portion that I'm going to read. As of January 8th, 2025, and again, this report is January 14th of 2025, GTII has retained Barton CPA PLLC as its new auditor and will expect the full audit of 2022 and 2023. So I got to read this again. So think about this. So January, we get a report in October. It says it's going to be November 1st. We get a report November 14th. It's going to be, they say it's going to be November, the end of November. We get a report on January 14th, says the prior accountants were crap and they didn't do things and they violated all kinds of issues and they were highly unprofessional. Even though it took us 4 months to figure that out, and we paid money to our attorneys probably in that process, we're going to get rid of them now. So that's done. And because of that, we hired a new firm on January 8th. Never heard of the firm, by the way, Barton CPA PLLC, but let's assume these guys are great. Let's assume these guys are fantastic. And it's a new auditor, and we'll expect, here's the punchline, we'll expect the full audit of 2022 and 23 to be completed in 30 days' time. January 14th. So January has 31 days. That's 17. So by February 13th, I thought, well, I guess by this, we should see a completed audit. According to this new auditor who took over for the bad auditor, according to the receiver or whoever drafted this. So as of February 13th, even February 14th, even I think the 16th, 18th, and 19th, March 1st, April 1st, May 1st, June 1st, July 1st, August 1st. Where is that completed audit? Where? Then they go on to say a Super 8K, I don't know if it's because it's great, will be filed with the SEC upon completion. Of course, I haven't seen anything, which means it probably hasn't been completed. And then, of course, we have to go to the next statement. And, this is by the time this has been released, the receiver's been in his position for months, not for days. So this may be provided with a little more certainty. We anticipate that the 2024 full year audit plus subsequent quarterly reviews will be completed before the March 31st deadline, March 31st of 2025. As far as I know, I haven't seen an 8K. I haven't seen the 2024 full year audit. I haven't seen any quarterly reviews. Maybe I have. I haven't. I don't remember any of them. And March 31st has passed. April 1, May 1, June 1, July 1, August 1. September 1 is 4 days away. This is the new auditor with their accountant. Remember, they hired Mr. Hawkins, who may be great. They hired Barton CPA PLLC. Those guys might be fantastic. But the time frames provided are not accurate. And months have passed, and probably expenditures beyond whatever we can contemplate, because we haven't seen the invoices, so we don't know. And as far as I know, they haven't broken out these fees. But they promised here, we got November, end of November, we got February, then we got the end of March. So it's kind of like, name that date, whatever date, works best. Let's try that date. Then we go to the fourth interim report that was issued May 16th. I think it was filed May 16th of 25. That's the last, as far as I know, that's the last report. I don't think there's been a fifth interim report. There's been a lot of questioning, but not a fifth interim report. And I go to the audit matters. So, I've read to you what they've said in the prior reports. And let's talk about the audit matters on page 2 of 41. Now, this is the report that I was absolutely certain was drafted by the Receivers Council, because he told me it was drafted by the Receivers Council. And I think I had bitched about the timing, and there hadn't been a new report. He asked for, patience because he was drafting it, and I think he had other things to do. But he told me. So that's why I presumed that all the other reports were, and that's why I asked for the billings. That's where I was concerned about all the amount that's been spent. And before I go on, I don't give a crap about this. I give a crap about a deal being done, us trading, and whatever. I'm just pointing out what's going on with the receivership. These guys can right the ship and get a deal done, but we're just talking about what they said and what's happened, and there's been inconsistency between the two. Rectify it, get it done. That's the point. Last receivers report that I can recall seeing, May 16, 2025, audit matters, bottom of page 2. As of January, so we're talking about January. Okay. As of January 8th, 2025, the receiver retained Barton CPA PLLC as GTII's new auditor. So that is 4 months, something like that, 4 or 5 months before that. GTII's audit will only focus on the years 2023 and 2024. I thought we had seen before, just make sure. I thought we talked about 2022 and 2023 too. Yeah, we did. Yeah, so this is kind of confusing. So in the prior report, so here they say they only focus on 2023 and 2024. The prior report says as of January 8th, 2025, GTII is retained, and this is the receiver and the Receivers Council, not GTI. I didn't retain Barton CPA PLC. Neither did any of the shareholders, as far as I know. As of January 8th, 2025, so this is the report from the Receivers Council, January 14th, 2025. As of January 8th, 2025, GTII has retained Barton CPA PLC as its new auditor and will expect the full audit of 2022 and 2023 to be completed in 30 days' time. I've not seen any such audit. In the May 16th later report, they say the GTI's audit will only focus on the years 2023 and 2024. What happened to 2022? And were monies paid? Where's the explanation? I don't get it. Now I'll continue on. Richard Hawkins, who by this point in time had like 7 months to do a full forensic accounting, and I don't know why it would take anyone. This is not a huge company. The receiver had done very thorough reports. There obviously must have been evidence available. If someone's a forensic accountant, that is a specific and very important talent of being able to go through financial records and be able to pick them apart and put together a story and corrections and make comments. So, I presume he's a competent guy. I have no reason to suspect otherwise. I don't know why by this point in time, he was just kind of appears he's working diligently, but we haven't got anything done. So it says, I'm going to read it again. And if you remember, in January, they talk about the 2022 audit. Here in May, that disappeared. As of January 8th, 2025, the receiver retained Barton CPA PLLC as GTI's new auditor. GTI's audit will only focus on the years 2023 and 2024. No explanation of why not 2022 now. Richard Hawkins, the receiver's forensic accountant and lead on the GTI audit. What do you mean the lead? Why would he be the lead? Why wouldn't the receiver or the Receivers Council be the lead? I don't understand why he wouldn't. And if he was the lead, why wouldn't he know all the information by them? Why wouldn't we be done? Why would we still be asking for an audit? Why would we have to be spending all the money we have to this point in time? If he was a forensic accountant, had been on job for months, and was the lead for GTII. No explanation, by the way. And again, I don't really care about this other than somebody's got to explain all this if we don't get a deal done, because it doesn't make any sense And it certainly costs money and time. And, where I started this, that Forster's kind of impatient now, this is why. This is one of the reasons why he's impatient. No explanation for why this stuff is not getting done. No explanation. Who made these choices? Who made these terrible choices, apparently? Because if there were good choices, I would think that these things would be done now. In my opinion, I don't really know. Wasn't involved. Don't know these people. Maybe these guys might be experts. The documents might be such a horrendous pile of crap that it's not possible to do, but we wouldn't know that because they haven't told us that. Anyway, Richard Hawkins, I'm still reading. Richard Hawkins, the receiver's forensic accountant and lead on the GTI audit, has been working diligently with the audit firm to finalize the audit. I'm rolling my eyes, just so you know. A draft of the company's 10K annual report that will ultimately include audited financials for 2023 and 2024 was submitted to the SEC prior to the deadline with extension to file of April 15th, 2025. I can't really understand what that says. I can't tell if they actually filed, they submitted a draft report to the SEC, or they submitted a request for an extension. Can't tell. And I don't think there's been any clarification because there was no report done about this. And then it says, even though Hawkins had been there for many months, and even though that new firm had been there since January 8th, as of May 16th, they say, the audit has been delayed due to some information not being available to the receiver. And why wasn't it available to the receiver? So I'm stopping. Why wasn't it available to the receiver, and what actions did the receiver take to obtain that action? Did they file lawsuits against people? Did they seek contempt orders? What did they do? I don't know. Which has now been resolved at the time of the writing. So they're saying as of May 16th that the audit, even though like the timeline doesn't make any sense, to be honest, in my opinion, but they're saying as of May 16th that the missing information has been resolved. So they got all the missing information now. And that the only delays now are because of missing confirmation letters from counterparties. So they had all the information. They were just missing the certification from the counterparties, primarily counsel, including counsel to GTII and individual defendants in this lawsuit. Currently, the following lawyers have not responded to GTI requests, which has delayed the completion of the audit. And it listed the 5 lawyers who have all now complied. How do we know they have complied? Because we did like a live stream, I think June or July, where they all complied. So apparently, based upon this report in May, the information they were waiting for was obtained, because that's what it says. The attorneys who had to sign off all did. So everything was done. So they had all the information. Hawkins was a forensic accountant who was back from way back, even prior to I think it was November of 2024. They had a prior accountant in January 8th. They got a new accounting firm, new auditor. As of May, they still don't have everything they need, although they have all the information. They get the certifications. And as of August 27th, still no completed audit. No explanation for what happened to the 2022, why that kind of suddenly disappeared off the racetrack. No explanation whatsoever. Until we get an audit, we can't get a deal done. And I have asked directly counsel to reach out, get a date about when this thing's going to be completed. Counsel being the counsel for the receiver. And they, as far as when they spoke to me or communicated with me, they didn't agree to do that. And they thought by asking, I think they said to the effect, by asking, it might delay it. We're like 9 months in, more. We're paying the freight. Makes no sense that you can't ask, get an update, and not be so obscure to shareholders where your information and your reports doesn't really match up. It doesn't add up. It provides no explanation. It's not clear. It makes me uncomfortable. It not only makes me uncomfortable, it makes Forster uncomfortable. Or else he wouldn't be putting out tweets like that. I'm not firsthand, but that's my conclusion from a tweet like that. And it makes no sense. So deal with this, guys. Answer the questions, get the audit done, get the deal done, explain yourself, and we'll move on. If you don't explain yourself, this stuff's not going to go away. If this is just a continuation of the bullshit we were dealing with it a year before, why would you expect this stuff's going to go away? So do your jobs. Do your jobs and get this deal done. Get this thing trading again, and stop, in my opinion, stop looking out for your personal interests over ours. That's my opinion from the sidelines back here. That's what it looks like to me. So get off your asses and work for your shareholders, not for your own personal interests, as it appears to be. I'm going to leave it at that. Other than, I promised 2 jokes at the end, so I'm going to give it to you. And just a quick summary. I went through Forster's tweet. I went through the attack on the shareholder. I went through compensation to the receiver. And I talked about the audit. Those kind of the things we addressed today in that order. Just to end it on a nice note, I'll take a quick breath. And I appreciate, by the way, everybody who stuck around to this point in time. I appreciate it. Appreciate you hanging out. If you have questions, comments, concerns, please put them, because I post these later on. So if you have comments, I look. So please post it. Obviously, we don't want the SEC to close this business down. We just want to make sure that the receiver does what's in our best interest, not what's in his own best interest or in the best interest of his counsel. That's not to say, by the way, that has to be illegal or anything like that. It could be construed as being somewhat, arguably, a moral question. And it would certainly, in my mind, I think the receiver's counsel is clearly doing tasks, making money. That's it. Whether the receiver really has the interests of the shareholders at heart, I don't know, really. And but what I see causes me to question that. That's why I've said this deal doesn't close. There's going to be a lot of people looking your way. That's just the way it is. And I'm not speaking for myself, by the way. I'm just speaking from a lot I've heard from. So that should give you a lot of motivation to get this deal done, or get a deal done, and get it done now, and get everything you need done to complete this transaction. Now, finish up with 2 jokes, or perhaps jokes. What do you call an incompetent psychic? Telepathetic. And last but not least, the world, and I try to pick jokes that kind of relate in some way to the topics that we're talking about. Somehow this relates to the topics in a very grand scale. The world is filled with lies and deception. The label on the door said ladies, but all I saw was toilets. Anyway, thank you all for hanging out. Again, if you agree, then you all can take action. Just do it in a civil way. Be respectful. If you disagree, do it in a civil way, but be respectful. And if you don't want to do either, you don't have to do either. But to all you out there, be well, take care. Obviously, we're going to stay on top of this at every moment. If you happen to get something from the receiver you want to share with me, feel free to share. Others do. And I'm happy to kind of review it. And if I have an opinion, I'll state that. So we will go from there. Obviously it's all opinion, conjecture. I just kind of read what the receiver writes, and I draw conclusions from what the receiver writes. And that's what I've done pretty much the entire time. Just use the receiver's language and kind of try to see if we can get explanations. Anyway, for all you out there, be well, take care, have a great day. And again, if you want to comment, feel free to comment. When I have more information, I'll certainly pass it on. To all you, be well, take care, have a great day, stay on top of it, and